I like to use the
Mhm.
word harmony. Try to find harmony in your work and your personal life. I try to be very diligent about this, and even others that I've mentored in the past, and even today. I think really it starts with you inside, internally. You've got to develop your self-leadership foundation, is what I call it. And then how you manage yourself is really how you're going to impact others and manage others, build teams, build culture. When I was in corporate, I used to worship work, as a lot of people did, and it really puts things out of perspective. And I think you're climbing ladders that really end up going nowhere.
Welcome to Mastering the Numbers, the podcast dedicated to providing insights into business and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Joe Mallo. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mastering the Numbers. I am Joe Mallo with Elite Edge Consulting Group, and today I have Brian Summerfield. He's the president of Cornerstone Manufacturing Group. Brian, thanks for taking a little time out to spend it with me.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. To get started, could you do the audience a favor and give them a little bit more information about Cornerstone Manufacturing Group?
Yeah, so we're doing business as TQ Manufacturing. TQ is a CNC machining operation that's been around since 1996. So it's got quite a track record here in Lake County, based in Mentor, Ohio. And we do machining services for a variety of industries. So fluid handling, aerospace, defense, transportation. CNC machining is really our core, but we're kind of posturing to be more of a contract manufacturer. So moving more into high trust industries, aerospace, defense, things of that nature. We've got a great team in place, over 30 years of experience with our core team in terms of machining and technical knowledge. So we're well postured, I think, for growth. I came into the business in 2022. In the last 3 years or so, we've scaled the business significantly. We've had about a 30% CAGR over those 3 years, moving into some new industries with some new customers. So um, great operation, and really what we're doing is trying to build it to scale and grow.
Awesome. Is there anything that you manufacture or make that people would recognize or be somewhat familiar with?
Yeah, we do some work for the firefighting industry, so a lot of valves and fittings that you would see on fire trucks or firefighters use. We do make some components for aerospace, filtration products, for engines, transportation. We do some work for the rail industry, so railroad industry. So there are some products I think people would recognize, but a lot of it's industrial, a lot of it's components for OEMs and things of that nature. So our
Great.
real
Awesome. Well,
specialty, I would say, is machining castings and forgings. TQ's got a
okay.
long legacy in machining what I call shapes. So anything that's cast from metal, aluminum, bronze, or forged. So anything forged out of steel or titanium, we're really good at that.
Awesome. Yeah, I've always found it interesting just over the years is, you look at things and you don't know who makes them, right? So you see every day we see it, every day we see a fire truck go by, or
Right.
maybe not every day, but often. And
Yeah.
so it's cool to know that someone local's making those parts. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, there's
So
a
so how
surprising amount of things that as you go through life day to day that is actually machined and people don't even
yeah.
realize it. So machining is definitely a core skill. It's something we need in this country, and we're having some challenges in terms of talent, but it's definitely something we've got to keep going in this country.
I would agree. So how did you get started in this business?
So I've always had a passion for manufacturing. I think it even goes back. I spent many years in corporate. I've always been drawn to building, whether it's systems or people. Even in large companies over the years, I had what I call an entrepreneurial itch as far as building functions and systems and just talent, building other leaders. I got burned out in the corporate world, after a number of years there, and I wanted to give SMB a go. But I think at the end of the day, the intent remains the same. I have a passion for manufacturing, and really part of my mission and purpose is to help restore U.S. manufacturing and do so in helping impacting people. Whether that's in a large corporation, private equity, or small business today, I think it all revolves around that purpose, and the passion for manufacturing. So I was doing some great stuff in the corporate world, just sort of got burned out with it and decided, let's give this a go in small business. And what I'm finding is a lot of these smaller shops, the owners are nearing retirement, and you're seeing a lot of these either shut down or get acquired. But we got to save it because really small manufacturing is the core of this country. There's a lot of manufacturing that's done by small business. So it's sort of a passion, how do we help SMB manufacturing grow?
Okay. I the whole corporate life, being just done with it. I hear that every single day. I mean, that's.
Yeah,
I mean, we could talk about my story, the same thing, but I think a lot of us get stressed out with corporate life, and we want to move on and try something else. So I'm
absolutely.
glad you did. So Cornerstone's been around for how many years? You said since 2022.
Yeah, 2022 is when we came into TQ manufacturing. TQ has been around since 1996.
Okay.
So we've been in TQ for about 3 years now. That's our operating company. OpCo is
Okay.
TQ Manufacturing.
How have you seen the organization evolve over these years?
I think from a technology perspective, we've been putting a lot of things in place on the digitization side. I think, we have a digital ecosystem that we put in place. We're using ProShop ERP. We put that in place in 2022. So we're almost getting to the point where we're paperless, which is really a good thing in manufacturing because there's a lot of paperwork involved. But especially as you start to move into some of the higher trust industries like aerospace and defense, you really need better control of your process. And I think end to end now, we've used software to sort of digitize our entire end to end sort of value stream, all the way from initial customer contact all the way through invoicing. I think that's been huge as far as optimizing our processes and increasing speed, and getting communication rapidly to customers when they need it. I think that's been a huge thing that we've put in place. And just documenting processes. You find in a lot of smaller businesses, things aren't well documented. They're reliant on key people within the business. So I think, making a key point to make sure that we're documenting everything and we have good, solid processes in place. I think creating standards like that really helps you be more competitive.
Yeah, I would agree. There's quite a few other industries. I mean, one I worked in forever, the financial world for 28 years. They still haven't caught on to the paperless side of it, at least not as far as they need to. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of people a lot of industries that need to catch up to you, for sure. So what have been, over the years, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, I think a couple come to mind. I think cash flow is definitely one. Working capital, especially in manufacturing, it's a very working capital intensive business, especially when you're in a smaller business environment. It's still a problem in bigger companies, but I think when you get into smaller businesses, it becomes even more critical. So I think just, cash flow management, working capital. But the other one, and this is a big problem that's well documented, a lot of people talking about it, is talent. I think we've had this huge void in manufacturing. For me, it's roughly 2000 to 2020, roughly 2 decades, where a lot of companies were outsourcing and we were just trying to discourage people from working in manufacturing, it seemed like. And it's created this huge void of talent. We have this massive talent gap that we're facing today. I think we've got to figure that piece of it out. Just finding good solid machinists, programmers, CNC programmers, quality people. Just finding talent is becoming a challenge for everybody. I'm encouraged. Last week I was at a local trade school here, and their manufacturing programs. Was actually doing a tour. I saw a lot of high school kids in there, and met some, and really sharp kids, very passionate. So I was actually encouraged by the amount of high school kids that I saw in the program. So I think that's encouraging, but we've got a long way to go in terms of talent. I think that's just going to continue to be a challenge here for the next 5, 10 years, especially as you have a lot of older machinists that are starting to retire now.
Right.
I think that's just going to create a void going forward that we got to close.
Yeah, it seems like there's a huge opportunity for those individuals to become mentors to people that are, coming into
Absolutely.
into your industry and sharing, their decades of knowledge with them. So,
You just
you
got
hate
to
to
find
lose
the
that.
right folks who want to learn and bring them into the organization because, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. We've got some very senior machinists that want to teach people. You just got to find the right folks that actually want to learn and want to develop and actually want to be in manufacturing.
Absolutely. So when you look back at the beginning of your organization, kind of a hindsight 2020 type deal, is there anything that you look at and say, hey, I think I would have done this or that a little bit differently as I was growing the company?
Yeah, I'll just go back to the acquisition side, because we acquired TQ. I think due diligence is super critical. So anyone in the SMB world that's looking at acquisitions, because it seems to be a thing now, buying small businesses, due diligence is really critical. It's a lot different than what it was in corporate. I think in the small business world, a lot can be hidden. There's some things that you don't see early on that emerge later that become problems. So you really got to make sure you're sharp on the due diligence side. So definitely a lot of lessons learned there. Your valuations are critical. Sellers are always going to think their business is worth more than it probably is. So from the buy side, you just got to be aware of that and make sure that you're actually valuing the company appropriately. And you got to look for things like risk, some of the things that I talked about earlier, documentation, key man risk. Is the business dependent on the owner? So if the owner leaves, the business is going to start crumbling. Is there one or two people inside that keeps the business, operational? Those are things that you just got to be aware of and look for. I think the other thing is just managing uncertainty is just a key lesson, and this is true regardless. There's going to be a lot of things that come up that you don't have control over, so you've just got to be agile and you've got to be able to manage that uncertainty. And there's been a lot that's happened over the last few years that you don't have control over, so you just have to be flexible and you have to adapt and you have to overcome.
Yeah, I agree in many ways. So with everything that's going on and, trying to find the right talent, growing your business, all the outside stuff that's going on, how do you maintain your focus?
Focus is focus is critical. Um, I think I've read some good books in this area. Essentialism is one. I think it's learning to say no to things more often than you say yes, because you've got to stay laser focused on what's most critical. With so much going on, and especially with all that uncertainty that I alluded to, if you're not focused on your key priorities, you're going to get washed out pretty quick. So essentialism is basically saying no to more, so you can focus on the critical few. A great book. It's really helped me focus. And then a lot of my corporate experience was in strategy deployment, which is really basically essentialism at a corporate level. Corporations have a lot of things going on, a lot of priorities. How do you distill that down to the critical few, which is strategy deployment, and then really focus on those with key, action plans, measures, make sure they have an owner, and make sure you're driving those through the business. So it's really about saying no more and just focusing on those critical few and honing in on them.
So that kind of fits in essentialism. Maybe in a way, there's some correlation between that and finding some amount of work-life integration. Is that something that you try to accomplish? And I'm not saying 50-50, that doesn't exist, but within essentialism, does that fill in around the work-life balance type
Yeah, I think
conversation?
work-life balance is definitely a constant tension. I think balance is elusive. I like to use the
Mhm.
word harmony. Try to find
Yeah.
harmony in your work and your personal life. I try to be very diligent about this, and even others that I've mentored in the past, and even today. I think really it starts with you inside, internally. You've got to develop your self-leadership foundation, is what I call it. And then how you manage yourself is really how you're going to impact others and manage others, build teams, build culture. When I was in corporate, I used to worship work, as a lot of people did, and it really puts things out of perspective. And I think you're climbing ladders that really end up going nowhere. So today, especially in the last, I would say 5 years or so, I've really recalibrated. So for me, it's faith right at the top, God first. But then you've really got to take care of yourself. And I think from that perspective, making sure from a physical, mental, and spiritual standpoint, you're really doing the things that you need to do to stay whole because you can't pour from an empty cup. So you can't do much for others if your cup's empty. So I think taking care of yourself, then from there, it comes down to family, your spouse, your kids, and then work, right? So I think a lot of people, including me in the past, put work at the top of that spectrum. And you just end up chasing the wrong things. You end up burning out in a lot of cases. So I think just calibrating and making sure that your alignment is in place is really important. It doesn't mean you don't work hard. I think your view of work just changes, how you look at it. So, but at the end of the day, when you're trying to chase balance or harmony, I think structure and discipline are really important. Especially when I talk about taking care of yourself, you got to make sure you have a good structure and just make sure you have discipline.
Yeah, I think in the corporate world, work is always first. I just, whether I think the majority of companies out there, even though they might say the words work-life balance, they don't really mean it. So it's just a tag word for them to hire you. Once you get in, they expect so much more out of you, and they'll
Yeah,
push you to the limits, regardless of whether you have work-life balance or not. So
sad but
that's what
true.
I've
Yeah,
found. So
agreed.
within the manufacturing industry, I guess outside of finding talent, which I know is a huge challenge, are there any other challenges, I guess big challenges inside your industry that are unique?
Yeah, I think technology is going to be a piece of it. So for me, it's technology, and then there's the people side of it. Like I said, you're always going to need people in manufacturing. No matter how much we talk about automation and AI, you're always going to need good people in manufacturing. So there's that people side of it. I think the technology side is definitely it's impacting the industry. You do have things like automation that's advancing rapidly. How is AI going to play into manufacturing? AI is evolving rapidly, so how is that going to play in? We're already seeing things with AI being able to do quoting automatically, CNC programming. I'm seeing AI, make headway in that space as well. Digital workflows, like I talked about, with our ERP, you're seeing different materials. So you're always going to have this evolving technology curve, I think, in manufacturing that's only going to increase. But you can't forget about the people side as well. So, the basic things on the people side, care, provision, guidance, those are always going to remain true. So you can't get caught up in the technology piece because at the end of the day, everybody's going to have access to that technology, but it's really going to be the people that's going to help you differentiate. So you got to make sure you're finding good people, you're retaining good people, you're taking care of them. If you can build a solid core team and then leverage that technology, that's really what's going to give you an advantage.
Yeah. With the talent level where it is right now, are robotics becoming a larger part of your organization? Is that something you've started, not started, you're thinking about for the future?
Yeah, robotics definitely has a place in manufacturing. I think when you're in environments like we're in today, that's very low volume, high mix is what I call it. You have very limited opportunities in terms of robotics. You have to have the right type of work. It has to be something that's got a bit of volume to it in terms of quantity,
Right.
and it's got to be consistent in what you're seeing. So it's a little bit more geared, I would say, to higher volume,
Okay.
lower mix environments like we see where you're running 10 parts or running 20 parts, and then you're seeing a totally different part that's another 20 parts. It's a little harder to automate. It's not impossible as long as you have the consistency of run. But for a high mix, low volume environment, I think the robotics just isn't there yet. I think it can be in the future. I think it's evolving that way. But you got to find the right opportunities for automation.
So where do you see the organization, 12, 36 months from now?
So aggressively scaling, like it has been. I think 2025 though has been an odd year. I think a lot of people would agree with that. I think in the manufacturing space, we've just seen a lot of turbulence, a lot of inertia due to the tariffs. I think the tariffs are a good thing for the country, in the long run to help level out the playing field with global competition. But this year, it's just created a lot of inertia. So we're seeing a lot of companies try to figure out the tariffs and then navigate them and try to find ways, in some cases circumvent them. So it's just created a lot of instability, I think, in the supply chains this year. So that's caused us to really have more of a tactical feel the last few months, and especially the way the rest of the year is looking. So this year is definitely not the year that we thought it would be, but it's just you're seeing it across the industries, different markets, different customers. You're just seeing a lot of inertia, a lot of turbulence. So ideally, things will settle out here, and in 2026, we can really get back to the growth plan, which is aggressive. We want
What,
to we want to aggressively scale and keep growing.
yeah. Within your industry and the tariffs involved, of course, I mean, it's definitely causing a little bit of volatility over the course of this year, but do you see that smoothing out? I think that's what you're alluding to, that part of it, that fear from some of the other people out there that's going to simmer down a little bit in 26.
Ideally, it smooths out this year and we can, move into Q4 with some stability. I think if they keep changing tariffs, I think that just continues to create more turmoil. I think if you're going to go with tariffs, just kind of lock them in and say this is what it is, so then companies know what they need to do,
Right.
from a strategic perspective. So hopefully things will settle out here. They seem to be getting a little bit more calmer now that people kind of see what they are. But if they keep changing them, which is what they kind of been doing here in the last 3, 4 months, I just think that creates a lot more confusion and a lot more readjustment by companies. And,
Yeah.
big companies move at certain paces and they've got people, all kinds of people working on these. So the more you change them, I think it just creates more confusion and just more analysis. So hopefully things will stabilize here and they can lock in on exactly what they want the tariffs to be and say, okay, this is what we got going forward.
Yeah. Are your biggest competitors for these types of parts? Are they within the United States? Are they outside of the United States?
Yeah, it's a mix. I would say for us, we have a lot of domestic competition. The machine shop industry is very fragmented. There's a lot of shops, even in Northeast Ohio here, around the country. I think in some cases with some of the larger OEM customers that we have, we do compete with overseas, and that can be difficult because you're at a disadvantage from a cost perspective right out of the gate. So you don't want to get into those situations where you're competing on price because that's a downward spiral to nowhere. So really, to me, you try to differentiate. How do you become different? We want to add value. We want to compete on trust. We want to compete on execution. What can we do from a value add perspective for customers and not just compete on price? That's a very transactional relationship, and I think you want to get away from those. And you want to move to more partnerships where they can rely on you as a vendor and know you're going to deliver consistently. So I think that's the competitive advantage. You want to get away from competing on price.
And is that something that long term you see the tariffs doing to help out manufacturing in the United States?
I
Is
think
it
tariffs
going to kind of
are,
take away that whole price side of it?
I don't think it's the total solution. I think just being familiar with global manufacturing, because I've traveled all over and I kind of know like manufacturing in other countries. I think there's more to it. China in particular has really built up a manufacturing powerhouse in the last, 3 decades. And they can compete, and they have labor cost advantages and other advantages as well from an industrial standpoint. So I think tariffs are part of the solution. It kind of levels things out a little bit, but I don't think it's the total solution. I think we've just got to become more competitive in this country in terms of manufacturing, and that's, on the businesses to become more competitive. But I think just from a governmental standpoint, we need more support, I think, from the government, in terms of regulations and costs and taxes and things of those nature. That'll help us become more globally competitive, so you can actually compete with low cost countries. that have significant advantages in terms of labor and material costs. So I think there's more to it. I think tariffs are part of the solution, but there's just it's a much deeper situation that we're in that we have to figure out.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks for sharing that information. I have a couple more questions for you, and then I'll let you go. The one is just what's the best business advice anybody's ever given you along the way?
Cash is oxygen is definitely one. I alluded earlier, manufacturing in particular is very working capital intensive. So you've got to manage your cash. Cash is oxygen. Growth is very expensive. So growth eats capital. It's kind of another one that parallels that. When you're trying to grow and you're trying to scale, it's going to be significantly more expensive than you anticipate. So if you are on a path where you do want to scale and you want to grow, you got to make sure that you understand what it takes to fund that. So growth has been very costly to get where we are today, and even to get to where we want to go, it's going to be capital intensive. So I think those are two. And then another one is always build to sell. And this just doesn't apply to small business. I think even if you're in a corporate environment and you're building something, you want to be able to step away from it and have it keep going without you. So I think some of the best advice that I could give others, even in small business in particular, is always be building your business to sell, even if you don't intend. And there's a good book out there, another one called Built to Sell, which is a great book.
Mhm.
And it just teaches you to be built as you're building your business, be able to build it so somebody else could acquire it and can come in and actually operate that business without you. So pulling yourself out of the business, if you're an owner, you want to make sure that you're doing that. Just always be building to sell, even if you don't intend to, because when you do get to that point and you say, I'm ready to sell or I'm ready to step away from this and do something else, you want that to go on without you, and you want to get maximum valuation if you are going to sell. So that'll help you do it.
Yeah, 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 and a lot of times people are forced to sell when they don't want to. It could be, or forced to step away when they don't want to. It could be because they get sick, maybe somebody passes away. So I agree. Building to sell is huge. That's how people should think about it because you just don't know what's going to happen.
You don't, and you want to have that optionality whenever it comes up.
So, final question for you. Let's say you run into somebody who is thinking about starting a business. Let's just say in the manufacturing space. What kind of advice would you give them? But let's just say they're having a hard time, you know, getting over that fence to actually start it and leave corporate.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say make sure you've got good runway, make sure you've got a good support network. But don't be afraid to do it. I think if you're really passionate and you're committed and you want to do it, I think you just got to make sure you've got, the basics in place, financial runway, you've got a good plan. If you're going to acquire a business, make sure it's a good one. If you got a startup idea, make sure it's a solid idea. But I think, after that, it's about mastering the basics. So when you do get into the business, get into the trenches and really start to know things inside and out. Don't rely on other people right away. It's kind of this illusion that you can just kind of maybe acquire a business and just kind of sit at the top and just have it operate. I think you really got to get into it and you got to understand what's going on. And then as a leader, find good people that are better than you or can become better than you and put them in the specific roles. I think that's critical. You don't want to be the best one. What's the saying? You don't want to be the
Yeah,
smartest one in the room. I
that's
think
right.
it applies here. You want to find good people, put them in the right seats, but you want to understand what they're doing, at least at a basic level. So you got to get in the trenches. You just got to know everything. You got to know your business inside and out, and then find good people that you can put in place.
That's good. That's definitely good advice. Brian, listen, I really appreciate you taking part in my interview series. If somebody wants to
Absolutely.
get a hold of you, what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, you could find me on LinkedIn, Brian Summerfield on LinkedIn. Our website is www.tqmfg.com. That's our business website. But LinkedIn is a great way to get a hold of me.
Perfect. All right. Once again, thanks again for taking part in mastering the numbers. Everybody out there that's listening, thank you for taking part as well. Have a great day, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Take care, Brian.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
You've just tuned into another episode of Mastering the Numbers. We hope you found valuable insight to boost your financial success. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Keep pushing forward, and thanks for listening.